Why is food so expensive in Nigeria? Or have you ever been in a situation where you experience some sort of like panic attacks when it's time to do market runs? And that's primarily because you are not sure of what to expect when you go to the market. You don't know how high the price of goods or food produce have gone. Well, the honest truth is that you're not alone, and in this video, I would actually try to explain or expound on some of the reasons why food is expensive in Nigeria and what seems to be the way out. I'm emphasizing Nigeria because we are in Nigeria, and that's literally going to be the focus. Once again, my name is Ajibola Oladiipo, and you're welcome to another edition of the Diary of a Patriot. As we all know, it's a channel where I get to chronicle things that has to do with Nigeria, the perspective of polity, politics, governance, and how each and all of those things sort of like affects us as citizens and how it connects with my own life and what I do, and that's why it's a diary. And for those that probably know, if you've ever had to come across me on LinkedIn or picked one or two things, so I studied food technology and I work in food security. I currently work on the Nigerian food security project where I sort of lead some work on policy. So I'm giving that background so that you sort of like have an idea of why I am probably going to be speaking in this way, or yeah, or sort of like speaking like authoritatively, is so that my perspective is sort of like informed, and so that we can get the basics right. So now that I've done that, let's get started by focusing on the basics. So, when prices of food or goods generally, when it goes up, there are usually three main reasons why things like that happen. Number one has to do with demand, the other has to do with supply, and the third, cost of production or distribution. We all know, we all did basic economics, right? And you know what happens when supply drops. When supply drops, there is scarcity. Same thing when there's increase in demand, and that in itself just naturally makes it scarce and drives prices up. When the cost of production, you literally don't even like sort of like have control over some of these things. Cost of production or distribution, when it goes higher as well, you don't expect someone to run a business at a loss. Why do we do business? To make profit. Why do you work? So that you can fend for yourself, so that you can profit off it. So yeah, one, two, three, we get it. So it's either supply, demand, or cost of production. Only that in the case of Nigeria, it's not just this, not just even Nigeria, generally, it's not just in reality, it can be a cocktail of all three. You can imagine when demand and supply, there are issues with demand and supply at the same time, or cost of production is rising and there's high demand, or and then supply is dropping. So when all of that happens at the same time, there is problem. That's from an economic point of view. And as we have it, we've established that, oh yes, some of our systems are weak, we need to build on them, we need to improve. Agreed. And of course that sort of makes some things um, more delicate, and that's why maybe the ripple effects can touch everyone in real time. But beyond that, let's now sort of like let's dwell a little on cost of production. For instance, you're thinking of the input cost of fertilizer. Before we even get to fertilizer, Let's say that my name is Ajibola, right? Okay, actually, my name is Ajibola, and I'm somewhere in Kangimi in Kaduna State where I have a tomato plantation farm. First and foremost, I need water. Yes, I need, I was talking about input and I was mentioning fertilizer. I need water, I need fertilizer, I need seeds, I need tomato seeds, quality tomato seeds. So now we're having conversations around climatic conditions, environment, and how all of these things also affects agriculture, affects farming. There is that. So because of that, you can't depend on rain. You need to set up, you literally need to set up an irrigation system. That in itself will drive up the cost. But beyond setting up an irrigation system, you need to run it with diesel or maybe petrol. That's also increasing energy cost. So, you actually would have to add all of these costs to your initial costs. We're talking about fertilizers. Oh, fertilizers are not even subsidized. You want to get them because you're not getting fertilizers, mean that you would have low yield or poor yield, and you don't want that as a farmer. That would drive up your costs, and you really, really, really want to tackle that. So there is also that as well. So I hope we're looking at all of the factors that comes to play, and we're just using tomato as an example. Beyond that, you're going to plant. You have people working on farm. You definitely pay them. It's mechanized, and maybe you have planters with which you plant the seeds. The operating and maintenance costs. If you don't have, you rent. There is that as well. When you are done harvesting, right? Of course, you have to monitor. When you're done harvesting, what then are you likely to also do? You have to load them into trucks. That's even like another complexity, and that's what also sort of introduces us into like another subject. Yes, so when you're done loading, you really want to sell them because number one, you don't even have enough storage facility to cater for them. Post harvest loss and all of that. You're trying to tackle that. So you put them on the road, and it's time to move. We know how many of the inner roads, what many of the rural roads look like. So some of them get bad in the course of transportation before it gets to you. You pay the person that will drive it from village down into town or other cities, or yeah, that'll move it from Kangimi down to Isolo in Lagos, for instance. What do you think the driver will do? The driver is going to think of the fact that, oh, he's going to have one out tires, some nuts and bolts, the wear and tear on the vehicle. He's actually going to factor that in billing the farmer as well. And at the end of the day, all of these costs will come down to you and I. Then, when we are thinking of checkpoints, then some official and unofficial settlements that are likely to happen on the road. Who would also bear the cost? The consumers. So these are associated costs with production, and it doesn't end at producing on the farm. It has to move from the farm to your table and my table. So those are considerations. The produce that got damaged in the course of transportation, who is going to pay for it? You would actually spread the cost. Those that are not good, you're not going to eat the loss just like that. So from Ajibola farms to Uncle Ikenna, who is staying somewhere in Akobo in Ibadan, he would actually have to pay for it. Or Umaru Musa, who is in Zamfara, or whosoever it is. So far that it's getting to you, you literally have to like pay for all of those things. All of these costs are associated with producing the tomatoes that you eat. That's an expression. So yes, in this picture that I have illustrated, you've seen cost of inputs, you've seen security concerns. Yeah, we didn't factor in security concerns, and that's a reality. The fact that you have a lot of middlemen in the process, or the driver, those that will load you from the farm into the truck, you have to cater for all of those as well. Those that we market and sell, they know where they need tomatoes and all of that. They are part of it as well. We're talking about the logistics issues as well. Those are realities, and these things drive up the cost. But honestly, these are just the symptoms. We can just go a little deeper. And when we talk about going deeper, with trying to look at it from how policy can sort of like help the system so that there is stability in some sort of way. And if you had to actually be very fair on the government, we've seen initiatives at some point in trying to ensure that agriculture as a sector or food in itself is available for Nigerians to consume. I remember that the Buhari administration did come up with the Anchor Borrowers program, and a whole lot of money was put into that to support farmers on credit. But literally, what was the outcome? Again, take home lessons for the government, because you have to put in monitoring and evaluation to ensure that it's actually giving the results that you desire. How to effectively track. And also, another critical question that everyone would ask is that, was it politically driven? That's very hypothetical, because the answer may not be very clear. But then that's also an attempt by the government to try and come in. Honestly, that in itself didn't result in sustainable productivity. Like, it wasn't productive, it wasn't effective, it wasn't sustainable, and that's why the program has sort of like died a natural death, and it looks like we're rinsing and repeating some things that did not work. And just like I said, government needs to do more with evaluating what works and what doesn't work. But more importantly, we know there's no price stabilization framework. Personally, we live in a capitalist world, and there's little to much that could be done about stabilizing prices. Because you're not the one producing for me, right? I just highlighted all of those costs, so I'm not going to sell at a loss. So we can also sort of like argue that, but then of course we know that some things should be benchmark. But then when you ask people to use their church mind, it's sort of relative. If you can't buy it, you go elsewhere. But again, we really need to. I know that we've been having conversations around food commodity board ever since the Bola Tinubu administration came on board. We've had some conversations and talks about having food commodity board so that they can stabilize and regularize price. But then that in itself is something that personally I don't think would be fully effective, except if the government would be heavily subsidizing some things. Again, as a nation, we pride ourselves in exporting raw materials. There's so many things we can do with maize. You know, if you are selling maize, if you buy maize from farm, you realize that it's probably cheaper than if you are buying roasted corn, right? If you like roasted corn like me, or you like it boiled, either ways, there's so many things you could do with corn. You know, um, there is conflicts, for instance. There's animal feed that's at some stages, but then we cannot. And just as it has been explained in the Wealth of Nations, written by Adam Smith, and we've seen over and over, even in developed countries, how that you cannot just sell raw materials and expect maximal profits of it. We really, really need to see that we need to invest in agro processing facilities. We need to encourage people, invest in livestock, invest in mechanized farming, invest in all of that. Yes. But then, just like some of the things that were highlighted prior to now, that's where government now has like a whole lot to sort of do to support ensuring that roads are motorable, ensuring that there are no bottlenecks. We have tax friendly environment, business climatic conditions are friendly, that allows businesses to thrive. But ultimately and primarily, we need to ensure that the system in itself, it allows for growth. So let's have a lot of agro processing facilities. If we have agro processing zones, and in these places ensure that they are usually connected. We know in different states, in different localities, we know where some products are like um, what you call like their major crops or major goods that they have. So what can you use to support them? Where you have milk, how can pasteurization and all of those things take place? How can we put cold storage facilities in place? Those are critical infrastructures that will drive the sector. For the most part, a lot of people think that our problems has to do with farming alone, but it's more than that. After farming, what do you do with it? We have quite a sizable number of the produce or some of our products that just naturally waste after all of these efforts into producing them. For instance, fruits and vegetables, nearly half of it waste. So what can we do to ensure that that half that is wasting can be preserved? There are people that don't have access to these things. Cold storage infrastructure, cold chains. But where are they? Where are those that will invest in doing this? Where are those that will set up industries that will tackle this? How will the government in itself support those who do things like this? So I hope that my explanation has not even sort of burdened you and you feel like, oh, are we sure that food is not even going to be more expensive day after day? The honest truth is that there are things that could be done because, well, just like I said, when we start looking at some of these things, we see how complex and how interconnected they are. But if government can fix infrastructure, rural infrastructure particularly, fix roads, electricity, even broadband facilities, because a lot of people also in rural communities are living for urban areas because they all want a better life. But then imagine we all have equal access. And you remember in one of my videos when I was talking about rural communities, I was highlighting how that's, nearly half of Nigeria's population live in rural communities, and we're at their mercy, particularly when it comes to feeding. So if they have infrastructures to support their living, then we're good to go. Without these people, a number of things wouldn't work. We also need a robust logistic, like a supply chain and logistic framework for food, agro logistic system that works. We need to build something very, very, very functional. We need to begin to think from farm to the markets kind of cold chain infrastructure. We need to start thinking of states having storage hubs functional. I know that the federal government operates grain reserves, but beyond that, at local level, we should even have on farm storages where as you're farming, you can actually store. These are things that could be done. The government. I know we just have to find a way that it's actually going to work, PPP arrangement and all. I know that there are some conversations concerning these ongoing, but these are some of the things that can actually help like fix these issues. Another real issue that farmers have, not just farmers, like the entire food security system, is financing. You know, all of these things have been enlightening, they don't come cheap. And the interesting thing is, they don't even come cheap. And we really need, and that means that the risk is so high. So you really need some cushion effects. We really need financing for agricultural entities, for farms, for people working within the space. We need to find a way. The Bank of Agriculture, many other private banks, we need to find something that works. And there's something I'm so obsessed about. I think it's a Nigerian problem and it's something we sort of also need to pay attention to. ensuring that we have a very qualitative, inclusive, and comprehensive data system. It will help inform our decisions. It can help guide us. It can help us make projections, know what to expect, and all of these things, and sort of plan things better. More importantly, I've always clamored for local governments to function fully, and that's because I strongly believe that um, local government authorities are best positioned, they're closest to people, and they're best positioned, best primed to ensure that dividends of democracy get to people. If LGAs are empowered in such a way that what's it called, they can really, really, really like have storage hubs, for instance, it means that we can begin to talk about food security on local government levels. So we will begin to think of LGs that are self-sufficient, that they can fend for themselves. LGs that are not agrarian in nature can begin to look into storage hubs, partnerships, and those kind of frameworks that will ensure that people in that locality would always have food. We have dietary diversities, we have all of those things. So if that means that if we have comprehensive data, just like I said, we know what our people eat, and you can provide them with such data, it makes their decisions sort of easy. The interesting thing is that all that I've said affects the trader from Enugu, affects the farmer in Kaduna, or the person who is studying in Ibadan, or a farmer in Ilorin. These are the realities of being a Nigerian. You are actually still going to buy those very same food. I hope that this sort of highlights what some of those issues are, and there's probably a light bulb moment of, oh, this is something I can probably do about this, or if you're in a position to influence one or two things to work better. I hope you learned something from this video, and more importantly, I hope we all have a better understanding of, at least compared to when you started to watch this video, on why food is a little more expensive in Nigeria, in present day Nigeria. I hope you learned something. And once again, my name is Ajibola Oladiipo. Thank you so much for your time. I will see you in the next video. Until then, bye for now.